Who dat? Welcome to the podcast you've been waiting for. Great perspective and exclusive interviews.
It's a hard job for those guys because it's happening fast.
The kind of Saints insight and fun commentary you won't get anywhere else.
We've got plenty of technology to speed things up.
It's time to kick off your Been There, Done That Saints podcast, where we hand it off to our host, Mike Nabors, and Super Bowl winning linebacker, Scott Shanle.
Proud of these guys.
Somebody asked me, when's the last time you watched the Saints on TV play? And I was like, well, that was the first time ever.
Drew Brees talking about when he was in L.A. watching the Saints beat the Seattle Seahawks. First time he ever watched the Saints on television. We'll get with Drew Brees and our exclusive one-on-one that I have with him at CST, and we're going to kind of break down the injury and all the angles around that. Welcome to another Been There, Done That podcast. I'm your host, Mike Nabors. I'm going to bring in two co-hosts that did not pick the Saints last week, and yours truly did, making me 4-0 in the first quarter. Scott Shanle and Justin Thomas. Scott, first, I'm not one of those pat myself. Well, maybe I am this week. Sorry. Scott, were you surprised by that Dallas game? What surprised you?
You know what? I was not surprised. I know I messed up the pick and said that Dallas would win. I felt like it was going to be a 13-10 game, so congratulations to those out there who felt like taking the under on that prediction, because both defenses I saw going into the game were excellent teams, and I didn't think both offenses could get it going. That's what happened. But the thing that shocked me the most was just how well the Saints' run defense played. You held one of the best running backs the last 3 years in the NFL to 2 yards a carry, less than 2 yards a carry. That was the difference in the game. The Saints' run defense was spectacular last week.
Our voice of reason, Justin Thomas, anything surprised you about the big win over Dallas?
Well, first, I want you to start playing the lottery and give me the numbers, because you've been on fire 4 weeks in a row, especially when you're going against us. But anything that stood out to me, you were wondering?
Yeah.
I have to agree with Shanle. I knew the Saints defense would be good this year. They kind of have been struggling early on, but that was a really impressive performance all around. And I think if they can continue to play like that and help the offense out, I think we're looking good while Drew Brees is out.
Yeah, we're going to get much more with our exclusive one-on-one with Drew Brees on his next big hurdle in his rehab, how the bye week with the Saints will impact the rehab, and his progress. He kind of has some interesting progress and what the doctors told him he can do with his thumb that you'll want to stick around for. But Shanle, looking ahead, the Bucs come into town. What a difference a couple weeks make for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Bruce Arians has brought them a new swagger. I think with Dirk Cutter, if they lose that game against the Giants with that missed field goal, they may lay an egg in L.A., but Arians has these guys believing. They're arguably the best offense in the NFC South now with the Saints not having Brees. I think this is kind of a dangerous football team coming in here.
They're dangerous coming off that big win, and it's dangerous because the Saints are coming off a huge win and playing a team that, people have kind of been the laughing stock of the league last few years, haven't been real consistent. You look at a couple weeks ago, they take the penalty, so they get moved back 5 yards, and then they miss the field goal by inches, and everybody's like, oh, here's the same old Bucs. Well, a week later, they go out to L.A. and have the most impressive win, to me, of this young NFL season. So they're a dangerous team, and I agree with you, Mike. I think Bruce Arians is the difference. You look at him, everywhere he's been, the Steelers as an offensive coordinator, they were great. He went to Indy. He got thrown into being the interim coach when Pagano got sick, and they were an excellent team, made the playoffs. He goes to Arizona, and he brings confidence to teams. They fizzled his last couple years there, but he brings a confidence and a swagger to teams, and I think that's what Tampa Bay was missing under Cutter. So I think they're a dangerous team as well.
The biggest beneficiary of Bruce Arians is Jameis Winston. Jameis Winston, it's well chronicled. He's a turnover machine, makes bad decisions on and off the field. Since Arians has been in Tampa, he's been perfect off the field. And on the field, he's your player of the week offensively with a huge game with 4 touchdown passes against the Rams. It seems like he's kind of reborn a little bit. And when he makes mistakes, I talked to Jameis Winston this week, and I asked him, what's the biggest impact Bruce Arians has made for you? And he says it's dialogue. It's when I go to the sidelines, he'll get on me, but he'll be constructive about it. And I think the even keel approach with Bruce Arians and Jameis Winston, the fact that, he's not going to tear him down as some coaches have when he throws all the picks. He's going to convince him to be who he is. I think that's going to help Jameis Winston. I think he's always had ability. I think he's going to get better and better under Bruce Arians.
I think so. I think when Bruce Arians went there, everybody automatically assumed that Winston, I think, would be the biggest beneficiary of that hire. And maybe the reason that Bruce Arians got the job, because like I just alluded to the teams where he went, he was outstanding with Roethlisberger. Andrew Luck had a great year when he was with him. And then he brought on Carson Palmer into Arizona when Carson was at the end of his career. And he had some really spectacular years. So I think that hire was made because Tampa Bay wants to give Jameis Winston one last shot at proving he is, just like they thought, as a number one overall pick, they want him to prove he can be a franchise quarterback. And they thought, let's go get a coach who's had a track record of success. And if he can't do it, then nobody can do it. We need to move on from Jameis.
But this Saints defense has proven so far they're very opportunistic. We saw it in Seattle. We saw it last week against the Dallas Cowboys. To me, they know how Jameis Winston is. They know his tendencies a little bit. He's a better quarterback than he was a year ago, but still we're only 4 games in. As a defensive player, game planning against a quarterback like Jameis Winston, you're going to try to bring him back to the old Jameis Winston this week.
Yeah, I'll tell you exactly what they're saying in the Saints defensive room, because I've been in there against guys like Jameis. They're going to say, guys, he's got a great arm. He's strong. But you know what? Just be patient. He will throw us 1. He may throw us 2. He'll throw us 3. Just be patient. Stay in your zones. Read him. Don't start to leave your man when he scrambles. Just be patient because he will throw us 1. And those are the type of quarterbacks that you're just waiting for them to make a mistake. And if Jameis can turn that corner and not be that guy that all these defenses think he is, that's when this team has a chance. This Buccaneers team has a chance to win some games.
Justin, I love when Shanle takes us behind the scenes in the defensive room, man. I get all excited when I hear these stories. I think you're right. And to me, with Bridgewater being steady Teddy, and he's not going to give you the explosive plays of Brees, and with the special teams and the defense really bailing Bridgewater out the last couple of weeks, they're going to have to bail him out with some Jameis Winston mistakes. I mean, to me, that's a crucial key to this game.
Yeah, when he makes a mistake, because I believe he will make a mistake just based on his track record. He hasn't really put together a lot of great games back-to-back with 0 turnovers, doesn't really take care of the football. And I think a lot of that is because Jameis is always trying to make a play. He's doing it from a good place in his heart, so to speak. He's trying to make a play for his team. But that little mechanism in your head, when you know something's not right, you just got to throw the ball away. And he hasn't done that enough. But I agree. If the Saints can get him to turn the ball over a couple times, that's been the formula for success the last 2 weeks. This Saints offense just needs to be steady. And this Saints offense, if they don't turn the ball over, the other two phases of the 3 have been playing well enough that all you got to do is just continue to be steady on offense.
Yeah, we're going to get to Drew Brees and some insightful discussions about his injury, but let's further preview this Bucs-Saints game or the Saints-Bucs game. I think the biggest matchup to me is Marshon Lattimore and Mike Evans. They've gone back and forth, and it's kind of, to me, Scott, whoever's at home kind of wins. Lattimore's had some great games against Evans in the Superdome, and Evans has kind of had his way in Tampa. Is there something to that, the home field, when you have a matchup like that?
I don't know if there's so much something to it. I think defensively it's always easier to play at home. You got a little more juice. The crowd's into it. It's 12th man, so to speak. You go on the road, playing at Tampa's tough. As a defensive player, it's going to be humid. It's going to be hot. You're playing on grass. You feel a little bit slower compared to the turf. And, I don't know why the stats show that for both those players, but I agree it's going to be a good matchup. And it all started when, Mike Evans pushed him from the back, and that all started in the Superdome. But Marshon should have a lot of confidence. He played well last week against Amari Cooper, who was kind of gimpy, but that's all right. He'll give Marshon some confidence. And I think they're going to go after him a lot with Evans' track record against him, especially at home, like you said.
The thing I love about this Saints defense is every play and every series, there's a different guy that steps up. And to me, that's the true sign of a great defense, Scott.
Yeah, I think you look at this Saints defense, and for 3 years ago, everybody had different positions they wanted upgraded. And now you look out there, and you're right, somebody is making a big play. Last week, A.J. Klein got beat by Jason Witten for 15 yards. And everybody in the middle of the play is like, come on, Klein, you got to cover him. He runs a 5-flat 40, and then what's he do at the end? He punches the ball out. Huge play for the defense. This defense, they just keep playing. They're steady. They keep playing, and everybody does their job. And when you do your job, eventually you'll be able to make a play, and that's what they're doing right now.
That's what you guys did in '09. To me, that was the big difference, Greg Williams. You saw it in training camp that you guys were practicing taking the ball away on a play-by-play basis in training camp. And you see, it's not Greg Williams, but it's Dennis Allen is obviously pushing the envelope and forcing turnovers, and it's paying off. But I see a parallel between this defense and the one you played on in just terms of creating opportunities and making big plays week after week.
Yeah, they're definitely doing that. I think the biggest difference, Dennis Allen's the D coordinator. He was on our staff. He was the defensive backs coach in '09. And so he runs a lot of the same things. Everybody was so excited at the end of this game when Dallas threw the Hail Mary, and I'm sitting there saying, come on, Dennis, don't run prevent, because that's what Greg always said. Don't run prevent, bring heat. Dennis brought the heat, and so everybody was pumped up about that. I even text him, and he's like, "What?" He's like, "There's no other option. I'm bringing heat. That's just the way we were raised. I mean, we listen to it all the time in the room." So, but I think the biggest difference I see between this defense and our defense was this defensive line that they have now is probably better. I mean, there's first-round picks all along that line, and they're young, they're explosive. And Cam's playing at a level the past couple of years that I don't think we've seen a DN play at for a long time. So I think their D-line is probably better, but you're right. It's all about taking the football away.
We get Dennis Allen texts, we get defensive behind-the-scenes meeting room stuff in this podcast. You don't get that anywhere else, folks. And you also don't get a one-on-one with Drew Brees like we do after each and every game. And we talked to him, even though he didn't play in the Sunday night game against the Dallas Cowboys. And I talked to Drew Brees at length about a lot of things, and we're going to touch on some different subjects. But I asked him about his next big hurdle in this rehab as he's trying to get back and exceed that timeline. Here's what he had to say.
The biggest thing is gripping and throwing the football, right? That's my job. That's what I do. I'm very confident in the repair that Dr. Shin did. I'm very confident in the internal brace that's in there. Take all the measures I need to continue to get stronger and get that, flexibility and range of motion. And then, when I start throwing, just want to be able to snap it and want to be able to get, that full range and do everything I need to do to play this game at a high level.
Love the internal brace, man. The internal brace. That's going to expedite things. Drew Brees is hoping. But Shanle, you've had thumb injuries, but you're not a quarterback. It's a different thing when you're a quarterback opposed to being a linebacker where you can just kind of play through it to a different degree.
Yeah, that thumb controls everything. You talk just holding a ball, the way it comes off your hand, the support you need in the pocket when you're holding on to that football, whether someone's trying to strip the ball or not. There's no way Drew's thumb will be as strong the rest of the season as it was coming into the season. It's just not going to be possible. It's going to be interesting to see just how much that brace helps him. But as long as he can securely and firmly hold on to that football so that everything comes out right, the rotation comes out right, he'll be just fine. But a lot of it's just going to depend on how that internal brace affects him and whether or not that strength can come back enough to grip the ball.
The prognosis when he was hurt against the Rams was 6 to 8 weeks. And if it was 6 weeks, he would return. And the home game against the Arizona Cardinals right before the bye week. Now, that's if he meets the 6 weeks. A lot of people think, it's Drew Brees, he'll come back before then. But we talked about in the last podcast, these thumb injuries are very hard to decipher, especially when you're a quarterback. I asked Brees about the bye week and how that could impact his return.
How will that impact things if you could have another week?
Oh, the additional bye week is crucial. It's critical. I guess it's falling at a decent time.
Yeah, it really is.
With all this. So, listen, we'll see. I'm just taking it one day at a time, and again, just trying to stay ahead of schedule.
If you listen there, Brees doesn't want to give up too much, but I really feel like he knows he needs that extra week, Scott.
Yeah, no question, and it falls at a good time. There's no sense in rushing back to play the Cardinals. This Saints team can take care of that team. Now you get 2 full weeks in between games, obviously with the bye week in there, and then he comes back at a critical time. We just finished the first quarter. The Saints are 3-1. The second quarter, they're going to have the Bucs, Jags, Bears, Cardinals. We'll see what happens there. But the third quarter of the season is all about the NFC South. You have the Falcons, the Bucs, the Panthers, and the Falcons again. So Mr. Falcons killer, Drew Brees will be back. The Falcons don't get a chance to play against Teddy. But it's a critical time in the NFC South race when Drew could return.
Drew Brees is always trying to get that edge in his rehab. Of course, that's the way he plays. Before the game against the Cowboys, he was doing his pregame routine and kind of jogging in the end zone. The fans were going crazy. He flexed to the fans, kind of sending the message, I'm fine, I'm strong, I'm going to make this. I asked him about the other progress that he has seen and kind of avoiding pitfalls at home with the kids. He's got the thumb, and around teammates. And here's what he had to say.
I mean, I pick up a pencil and write, and doctor actually said, like, texting and emailing is actually a good thing on your phone.
It is?
Yeah, just moving that thumb. I mean, just getting blood flow and just trying to continue to move it as long as you don't get it in compromising positions, but it's good.
So no close calls yet at home. You're okay?
No, I'm good.
The Brees boys, I was kind of worried. They may wrestle Dad when he comes home and re-injure the thumb, but Drew's very careful at home. How about texting and writing with the pencil is good for the thumb? Good rehab.
A little rehab. I remember there's a lot of weird exercises when it comes to those extremities. I remember with a high ankle sprain, they would tell us to spell the alphabet with our feet. Or here's a good one for you. We would sit in the training room. They would dump cough drops on the floor, and you'd have to pick them up with your toes and put them in a cup. That was ankle rehab for a high ankle sprain. So there's a lot of weird things that can get those extremities going. But yeah, maybe I need to text him constantly and just say, hey, I'm just trying to help out your rehab.
Shanley's bringing his A game today. We got the Dennis Allen text. We got the behind-the-scenes defensive meetings. Now we got rehab thumb notes behind the scenes. That's good stuff. I want to bring in this. We're going to have more likely later. We're going to have our predictions, more likely hypotheticals. But I'm going to bring in a big hypothetical. It's kind of intriguing. We talked about Marshon Lattimore. The Saints didn't think Marshon Lattimore would be there, when they drafted him. And they've made no bones that if Lattimore hadn't have been there, they would have drafted Patrick Mahomes, and he would have been theirs for the taking if they hadn't have picked Lattimore. Shanle, can you imagine if they had Patrick Mahomes and he would have sat out not 1 year like he did in Kansas City, but 2 years and would have stepped in the last couple of weeks? Let's say he lights it up for the Saints while Brees is out. How crazy that dynamic would have been.
Yeah, unfortunately, I wish I never knew how close the Saints were taking Patrick Mahomes. It's a dagger, and that's not. Marshon Lattimore is one of the elite corners in the league. He's outstanding, and this is not to take anything away from him. But when you talk about the quarterback position and Mahomes, the way he's played, you're talking about the defending NFL MVP. To know the Saints were so close to taking him before the Chiefs went up there and got him. I mean, it's just hard to believe that you could have had a guy like him for the next 15, 16 years running your franchise after Drew Brees left. It would have been the ideal situation. So it's hard. I just wish I would have never known that piece of information that the Saints had him on the board before the Chiefs took him.
Well, if all was right in the world, the no call wouldn't have happened. The Saints would have won the Super Bowl. And no offense to Marshon Lattimore, they have Mahomes. Mahomes just steps in. It's like a Brett Favre, Aaron Rodgers type situation in New Orleans.
Yeah, and not many teams have that luxury of going. They always say you don't want to be the person to replace a legend. You want to be the person to replace the guy who replaced the legend.
Right.
And so the Packers got lucky with that. Just like it's not going to be good for whoever has to replace Drew. That's just how it's going to be because no one will live up to Drew Brees. The only guy who could have come close is probably Patrick Mahomes when you look at his body of work and what he's done so far in the NFL.
Yeah, and he's a good guy to me off the field. He's a community leader. He says all the right things. So, yeah, that'll be a what if. And you know who's really killing themselves with Mahomes are Chicago with Trubisky or I mean some of these. It's so easy for me to look back and say all of that. But I mean, look at the Bears, and I know we're going off tangent here, but they not only didn't get Mahomes, they didn't get Deshaun Watson either.
Now that is when you're kicking yourself. It really is because the Bears defense is for real. If you watch them, that Bears defense is the real deal. And I just want to know what the Bears were looking at to think they had their pick of any quarterback in the draft, and Mitchell Trubisky, who played 1 year at North Carolina, was their answer to getting him to the Super Bowl. And listen, nobody knows at the time who's going to be good. Deshaun Watson, everybody talked about his leadership skills, didn't know if he was just a guy, a Clemson system guy. But Patrick Mahomes, there had to be something there because Sean Payton and Mickey were all dead set that he was the best quarterback in that draft, and I just don't know why the Bears couldn't see that as well.
And to me, I mean, we all love Ryan Pace, former Saints employee. He's a GM of the Chicago Bears. He's done a great job. I mean, the Bears made they've been contenders, and they've gotten better since he's been there. But my whole thing is it would have been very interesting if Mahomes would have played well, and obviously Drew would come back, but that whole dynamic would have been awkward. It would have been a good problem for the Saints, though.
It definitely would have been a really good problem. My only question is would Patrick have sat for 2 years? Would the Saints have moved before this injury even happened to Drew, because the Chiefs obviously saw him after his little redshirt years as a rookie. They said, heck, we just paid Alex Smith. This kid's the real deal. They moved Alex Smith out of town in a heartbeat, and they knew he was the future of the franchise. So it would have been interesting to see if the Saints would have saw the same thing after 1 year.
Yeah, we will never know, though. But we love living in the world of hypothetical, which is why, Justin, you know what time it is. More likely time, 3 hypotheticals regarding the New Orleans Saints. Sometimes we do NFL. Sometimes we go outside the lines a little bit. We bring back Justin, our voice of reason, who sometimes throws unbelievable stats at us. We never know what's coming from Justin. But number one, with our more likely, which of these players concerns you the most moving forward with the Saints? Because I think the next 3 games are crucial. I'm not worried about that Arizona game. I'm worried about the Bucs. I'm worried about the road game against the Jags, who found themselves all of a sudden. And I'm worried about that road game big time against the Chicago Bears, even though their quarterback, we just kind of talked about him, but their defense is so good. But which one of these players concerns you the most, maybe moving forward in those 3 games? Teddy Bridgewater, steady Teddy. He's not going to wow you, but he's not going to really hurt you. Tight end Jared Cook, who I'm looking at my milk cart and I see his face like front and center. Or Marcus Davenport, who to me, we're still kind of waiting for him to be the guy, even though he's still very young. So you have Bridgewater, you have Jared Cook, or you have Marcus Davenport. Justin, you go first.
I'm not worried about Davenport. I think he's every week being real close. He's gotten a ton of pressure on the QBs. He almost had a couple sacks, I believe, this last game. Just so close. I'm not worried about him. I think he's coming along fine. I think between the other two, then I'm worried about Teddy. I mean, you call him Steady Teddy, and he is. He's a game manager. But I feel like we need someone like Drew who can do so much more, who can move that team down the field. And with 2 pretty good, actually 3, the Bucs defense has shown that they can be pretty good, especially on the D line. I'm just concerned if Teddy's going to be able to do enough to put the Saints in a position to win these next 3 games.
I'm with you on that. Scott, what do you think?
Yeah, I think just when you look at the impact all those players have on this team, Teddy touches the ball every single time it gets snapped. And I'm not so much worried about this game and the Cardinals game. I know the Buccaneers are riding high. I'm worried about the road games at Jacksonville and at Chicago, because I think those teams have the best defenses of the 4 games coming up, and Teddy's going to have to make some plays to win those games.
Yeah, I think Jared Cook to me is like the inverse effect, because Jimmy Graham was such a stud in New Orleans. He went away and didn't have the impact, and Ben Watson wasn't as good other places he was here. Jared Cook was great in Oakland, and he comes here, and what the heck's going on? I just don't understand that. But yeah, I think Teddy Bridgewater to me, golly, man, to me, we always talk about that window with Drew Brees. Now it's the opposite. This team is built to have Drew Brees, make them an elite team because the defense is so good, because the special teams are so elite. Teddy Bridgewater, to me, is going to have to step it up and be a little more than steady Teddy, because he's getting help. He's not going to get that kind of help every week, so he's going to have to step up. All right, the Ring of Honor. They just announced that Will Smith is going to be the next inductee into the Ring of Honor. I remember when Morton Anderson was inducted, Sean Payton said, you know what, this isn't going to be a yearly thing. It's going to be a real special honor. We're going to put some thought into it. They're playing the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The Bucs put somebody in every year. They put 2 people in a year at one point. Will Smith goes in. Of these 3, who do you think should go in next? And you can go off the board too. Deuce McAllister, Marcus Colston, or maybe one for the Dome Patrol, and have kind of a cool ceremony where you bring all 3. Of those 3, what do you think, Justin?
I like the idea of the Dome Patrol going in, and kind of what you said, having all 4. I think that'd be really fun to see.
4 I meant, yeah, I'm sorry.
But I have to go with, and we've discussed this before, but my favorite player growing up, that's Deuce McAllister, Saints leading rusher. Mark Ingram could have taken it away if he stayed. But yeah, I'm actually surprised he's not already in the Ring of Honor. I think what he did even before Drew and Sean came in, he was one of the players to watch on the Saints team offensively. A great person when he played, and now, in the booth, you gotta you got to have Deuce McAllister in the Ring of Honor. Come on.
Yeah, I agree. And he's the all-time leading rusher. It's almost like it's meant to be that he's going to be there for some time. I think Kamara one day could beat that if he sticks around with the Saints, and you would figure he would. But Scott, I want to ask you to weigh in your thoughts on Will Smith, because you played with him. You know the impact that he made in this football team, because you saw the whole renaissance of the Sean Payton era. But along with that, who do you think should be next? But I want to get your thoughts on Will too.
Yeah, I think it's a tremendous honor for Will. Just everything he meant to our team as a captain, what he meant to the city of New Orleans. He was their first round draft pick, and I think what he did on the field, people will look at stats wise. I think he ended up the 5th all time in Saints history in sacks. Very productive player on the field, very productive person in the community. But I think it's a great way, a great memorial, great service to remember Will and just the impact he had on the greatest era in Saints history on the field, winning a championship, but also remembering Will for what he did off the field. And I think that name up there in the Superdome, when every time somebody sees that name, they'll think of what an outstanding person Will Smith was on and off the field.
Yeah, I agree. I remember interviewing you after many games, and it was such a great locker room under Sean Payton. Will Smith, win or lose, would always talk to me. He was so great with the media, and obviously he was a great leader and a great player. So I think it's going to mean the most to his family, who is going to have that moment, his young children, and they'll always be able to see Dad's name in the Ring of Honor. So that's great for all of them as well. But who do you think should be next, Scott?
Well, I'm going to stick with your choices, and I think you couldn't go wrong with any of those guys. They all deserve to be in there. But as a linebacker, I think it'd be awesome to have the Dome Patrol up there. There's no other team in the NFL who can say we've had every linebacker go to the Pro Bowl in the same year. When you say Dome Patrol, most NFL historians know who those guys were and what they meant to the New Orleans Saints. It was unfortunate. They ran into the 49ers. I mean, that was an unfortunate time, but no other team can say they had a linebacker core like the Dome Patrol, and those guys should be honored as one, I think.
Yeah, Sam Mills has a statue in Carolina, for crying out loud. Let's honor him in New Orleans and make that happen. And I do think they'll be honored. I think Colston and Deuce, it's a matter of time. I think all the above would be my answer. But I'd like to see the Dome Patrol, because I think sometimes chronologically it's good. Will Smith, I think, is different just because of the circumstances, and I think that was a great gesture by the Saints. But I think if you take away circumstances, sometimes chronologically is a good way to go. So you kind of have some lead up to and some anticipation of who's next. All right, our last one, in terms of more likely, some surprises in the NFL this year. What's your biggest surprise? The Falcons are so god-awful terrible. The Buffalo Bills are so good. Or this Gardner Minshew fella with the stash in Jacksonville is making everybody forget about Nick Foles. Of those three, what's your biggest surprise, Justin Thomas?
I got to stick with those three.
No, you can go off the board.
Well, I'll stick with them. I have to say, as a Saints fan, I'm always rooting against the Falcons, so that's not shocking to me. I'm not going to go with the Falcons. That's expected. I've been impressed with Gardner Minshew, especially how he's already in such a short time kind of become like a cult icon, it seems like, amongst NFL fans. But I've been really impressed with the Buffalo Bills. They've played very tough, especially against the Patriots. I know QB looked horrible, but they played a really good Patriots team. I think a team that most people say would be the best in NFL, and kept it very, very close. I think what they've done thus far has been really impressive overall. So I would go with the Buffalo Bills.
You know what? They should have beaten the Patriots last week. If they had any offense at all,
I know
they should have won that football game. And that defense is really, really impressive. But maybe I'm putting this up on a tee for Scott Shanle, a known Falcons fan. But Falcons, Gardner Minshew, or Buffalo Bills? Biggest surprise?
Let me just touch on the Falcons real quick, because I tell you, ever since they went to that Super Bowl, they haven't been right.
No.
And I think Dan Quinn is dangerously close to being fired during this season.
They
have a tough schedule, and when you pay a quarterback, you pay a wide receiver, and you have talented guys, and you don't win, the head coach is going to go. So I think it is shocking to me that Atlanta is not better than they are, because I thought of the other three teams in the NFC South, they were the best. to
I
give
did.
the Saints a challenge. So
Yeah.
I am shocked by that.
Yeah, I mean, I thought they would push the Saints or maybe win the division. Yeah.
Yeah, they have that type of talent, which is why I'm saying Dan Quinn, his seat is dangerously hot. It's probably on fire right now. But I'm going to go with Minshew. I think Uncle Rico, it is the story of the NFL. Now, it remains to be seen if he can play like this for 16 or 17 weeks and be that guy everybody thinks he is right now. But it's a fun story. He's playing really well. He's a Mike Leach quarterback who everybody says Mike Leach quarterbacks can't play in the NFL. He's a fun-loving guy. I think it's a great story for the NFL. The interesting thing to me is if the kid ends up playing well, what happens to Nick Foles? They just gave Nick Foles all this money. Do they trade him? Do they do something? Because if you got a guy on a rookie contract, that means you can pay a ton of other people on your team, and that's how you get good in a hurry. So I think I'm going to go with Uncle Rico tearing up the NFL right now.
Uncle Rico, baby.
Foles will just go back to the Eagles and win another
yeah.
Super Bowl as a backup.
They'd love to have him back there, maybe. It's like the Matt Flynn effect with Russell Wilson, but Foles at least has some cachet. He won a Super Bowl and has done some things in this league, but there's some parallels there. I'm kind of broken up because, we're going to be in Jacksonville next week. I should have thought about this and grown my Minshew stash for the pregame show, Shanle.
This guy is a legend. I'm telling you, it helps that he's playing well and they're winning. Otherwise, everybody just look at him as a goofball, but he wears these jorts. He's got the crazy, the mustache. I mean, you saw some of his outfits he wears on the team plane. So if you are that bold to wear that stuff, you better play well. And he's doing it so far, and he's become a little cult hero so far.
Yeah, I used to work in Jacksonville, and I can't imagine, it's not a big place, how big that guy is in Jacksonville. Just because I'm sure he's a man of the people. Just going to the grocery store, or I don't know, man, going through a drive-through, he must be the king of Jacksonville already. And I'll give him a lot of credit to play this well early. You would only think he'd get better. And, Tom Brady was a sixth-rounder. Just saying, guys. He was a sixth-rounder, too. I got to go with Minshew, even though I got to say something about the Falcons, too. Maybe it's the Dirk Cutter effect. He got it. He didn't get it done in Tampa, and then all of a sudden he goes back. I thought that would be a good thing because he and Matt Ryan had such a rapport, but it's almost like they reverted. I don't know. I mean, like they've never worked together before. That's been kind of an odd thing. Usually you get an old voice who was good to you, and you would go back to playing better, but that hasn't happened. All right, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say, Mike, I agree. I thought Cutter going back was going to be good, but when I watch the Falcons, just plain and simple, they're soft. They're not physical as a team. They're not hitting people in the mouth. Their offensive and defensive line are soft, and that's why they're getting beat. And so it doesn't really matter that Cutter's there. Until they play with some toughness, they're not going to win any games, and Dan Quinn will be looking for a job.
Can you imagine if Shanahan would have gotten the job as coach there? Yeah. That would have been a really dangerous team.
Yeah.
Yeah, he and Peyton would have had fun in that NFC South because those two guys are both fiery guys, man. They like the action out there, so that would have been fun to watch those two. All right, prediction time, guys. I'm going to go Justin first, but this is kind of a tricky game for the Saints. But what do you think, Justin?
I kind of want you to go first because you've been doing so well. I want to look like a smart person too. For some reason, I see this as a trap game for the Saints. I don't know why. I don't think the Bucs are as good as maybe they seem to be. But, I really am concerned about Teddy Bridgewater. I think he's serviceable, but he's not good enough to keep up, I think, with this Bucs offense. I think the defense will keep the Saints in the game for a while, but I think the Bucs are going to pull away in the end. I'm picking the Bucs to win. I hate to do that. I think it's going to be somewhere like 27-17.
Wow. 10-point win by the Bucs at home in the Superdome, huh?
Yeah, something about this game doesn't sit well with me.
Interesting. All right, I wrote that down. All right, Scott Shanle, what do you think? Bucs, Saints, Bucs here.
Yeah, Justin, he has all the reasons to feel that way. I think about this game because the Bucs are coming off their biggest win in years, and when you go put 55 points on the Rams, that says a lot. It says you're a talented team. And then on the flip side of it, the Saints are coming off their biggest win of the year. Nobody thought they'd beat the Cowboys. So It's the perfect game. It's the perfect trap game emotionally for both teams. I just have not seen enough of the Bucs to say the Bucs can come into New Orleans. Jameis Winston can be trusted to play 2 great games. And I can't even think of many guys they have on defense that can take over this game. They're obviously a good team. Like I said, they beat the Rams. I just think the Saints are going to win a close one at home. If this game was on the road in Tampa, I'd be much more worried. I just think the crowd's been great. The defense is on a roll. They'll feed off that energy. I'm going to go with the Saints 24, Tampa Bay 17.
Nice. All right, we have 1 Buck, 1 Saint prediction. I've thought about this game quite a bit, and I think Teddy Bridgewater's done a decent job, not a great job so far. I remember last year when Fitzmagic came in, and it was an offensive shootout. If this game is an offensive shootout, I think the Bucs definitely win because Bridgewater's been bailed out by the defense. He's been bailed out by special teams. I really believe, Scott, if they don't get those 2 scores in Seattle, they may lose that game. The offensive firepower was not there. I think the clock finally, Cinderella's over for Teddy Bridgewater this week. I think the Saints have a late lead. They lead 23-21. And Matt Gay, of all people, the much maligned kicker for the Bucs, kicks the game winner. They lose in a heartbreaker, 24-23. Winston's always going to make his mistakes, I believe, at some point. But I think Winston is a better quarterback than Teddy Bridgewater, guys, in terms of putting up points and putting up numbers. I just think this offense under Bruce Arians is improving, and I think they're a dangerous football team right now. That L.A. game was an eye-opener to me. I think they win, Scott.
Hey, who am I to argue with you? You're on a roll. I mean, you're playing with the house's money right now, so I hope you're wrong this week. But you brought up the record, and just for a second, think about this first quarter of the season. The Saints are 3-1, lost Drew 2 weeks ago. Everybody's feeling good about where we are. This is how easily the fine line in the NFL. The Saints could easily 1-3, easily be 1-3. The Texans game, the Seattle game, if you don't get the punt return or the defensive score, that game maybe turns out different. So it's a fine line in the NFL, and you got to give teams credit when they win because it's hard. It's hard to win in the National Football League.
Parting shot here. Where would the Saints be without Will Lutz this year? Think about that.
Will Lutz has been the most underrated kicker, maybe one of the most underrated players in the NFL the last couple of years. We were talking about this the other day with somebody, and I said, Will Lutz is such a good kicker that you can be messing on your phone, tweeting, sending a message. You don't even need to look up because you know that's a high probability Will Lutz is going to nail it.
He's definitely saved the Saints. All the points against the Dallas Cowboys, where I'll leave you on this stat. Been there, done that, nation. Here's the deal with the Saints. The first win ever under Sean Payton without scoring a touchdown is Will Lutz accounted for all the points. The last time the Saints won a football game without scoring a touchdown was against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Back in 1998, they won 9-3, where it was all field goals. And Doug O'Brien, I believe, was the kicker for the New Orleans Saints the last time they won a game without a touchdown. So that shows the importance of Will Lutz, and that shows how Teddy Bridgewater is really going to have to step things up quite a bit. Well, listen, we've enjoyed the podcast. I appreciate the voice of reason, our producer, Justin Thomas. I appreciate my partner, Scott Shanle. Check us out on Twitter. What's the Twitter handle, Justin?
At Done That Podcast.
Every time you say that, we get like 2 or 3 more followers, so we appreciate that. Check out us. We're on all the platforms, iTunes, Podbean, Stitcher, Spotify, Google+. So check us out there. We appreciate it. We bring you insight from Scott Shanle. He takes you in the defensive meeting rooms. He gives you text from Dennis Allen. We give you one-on-one interviews from Drew Brees. You're not going to get that kind of content anywhere else. So thanks for logging on to Been There, Done That podcast, and we'll talk about the game next week and look forward to Jacksonville in a week. Appreciate it.